Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Today isn't particularly the most exciting video ever, because clearly this isn't a Koenigsegg, but it's a very dear video to me because this car, this is a 190D. What makes this a very dear video to me is because this hunk of metal, it used to belong to my now late grandfather. He always said that this car would be my heirloom, basically, that this would be what he would give me. For today's video, I'm going to tell you a little bit of the stories behind this car, this specific car, but at the same time, I will try to review this car to understand if a car that was designed 40-something years ago by Mercedes, if it has any chance of being a daily driver. We are in 2025, this car was developed in the 70s and it was put on sale in 1982 more or less. So it's a fairly old car and I'm going to review it, and I'm also going to try answer the question if a 43-year-old design, if it does work as a daily driver in 2025. As I briefly mentioned in the beginning, this car belonged to my grandfather. He got it around 2001, more or less. And I remembered vividly him getting this car. He used to talk about it so much. He used to say that it was the best car in the world. He was actually over the moon with it. Although he also came from what I think was an Opel Kadett at the time, which was a very old car. But nonetheless, he was ecstatic about this car, and this is the part where some of you might go away, but to me, knowing what I know now, I understand why he liked it so much, because this car is an automatic. He used to say such nice things about the gearbox of the car, how the car drove, and when I was younger I used to think, oh, you're just older, you don't really know what you're saying, what you're talking about, because at the time I was looking more into BMWs and manual cars, so that was, and I was far younger, of course. I've driven this car since I've owned it, basically. I've driven this car 10,000 kilometers. I did need to do some maintenance to it. The wishbones, they needed to be replaced because the bushings, they were torn. So I did do some maintenance to this car, the new brakes, yada, yada, yada. But I do understand now why he was so over the moon with this car. So this car, it has a connection. I have a connection to it because my grandfather, this was his personal car. He gave it to me. But I also have a very strong memory with this car because, and my grandfather, he actually told me this story because I did not remember it as such, but I was around 8 years old. And some of you might think, oh, he's crazy because he did that. Yeah, I don't really care. I was 8 years old and he actually gave me the keys to this car. We were on a public street. Granted, it was a very quiet public street near his house. But he gave me the keys and he told me, go ahead, you can drive here. And I remember driving the car. I remember doing stupid shit that an 8-year-old would do if they were given a car without someone sitting next to them, right? So I was 8 years old and I was driving a car on public road. This was basically the first car that I drove on public street. So it all ties a little bit together why I love this car so much. It's a tremendously well designed car, as I will try to show you. And it's a car that I like to drive. It's been very reliable. Everybody actually likes to drive this car, to be honest. And people do look at it. People do look at the shape of the car and they enjoy the shape of the car. Yes, you can tell it's an old car, but it's also a car that you're not seeing as often these days. It does make it for a treat when people actually see the car. And this car isn't in perfect condition. The paint is a bit faded, it's got some scratches. The bumpers have a little bit of nicks here and there, but overall it's in good condition. It is getting a little bit of rust here and there in the roof, in the C-pillars actually. But as I said, overall it's in very good condition. In terms of specs, what does this car have? Well, funny as it may be, it's not as different from a modern day Clio as such. Yes, this is the baby Benz, but do remember that this car was launched in 1982, so it was quite a long time ago. I wasn't even born. I would only be born 11 years after this car was introduced to the public. As I said, this car has a 2.5 liter diesel 5-cylinder engine, which makes it a little bit uncommon these days. It had from factory an astonishingly high figure of 89 horsepower and 154 newton meters of torque. Realistically, those numbers are moderate numbers. They are not very high, but they are more than enough to carry this car everywhere it goes. It is relatively light. I do not remember the figure off the top of my head, but I do think it's around 1,300 kilos, something like that. The gearbox. What do we have here? So we have a blisteringly slow, not really, but yeah, it's kind of slow 4-speed gearbox. And yes, while it might be a little bit slow, it fits the character of the car, actually. Funny enough, I remember in the old days, cars would hold on to gears for longer than I'd like. That was one of the things that made me not like automatic gearboxes, because sometimes I noticed that the car could select a higher gear, but it got stuck at high RPM. This car, it wants to go to 4th as quickly as possible, which sometimes gets a bit annoying, but it is what it is. But the gearbox, it is smooth for its age, obviously. Let me drop some knowledge. You might already know this, but if you don't, some knowledge on why this car exists. So this is theoretically the first C-Class that Mercedes produced. It isn't officially named the C-Class, but it is what spawned the compact executive saloon, at least inside of Mercedes. This car came out in 1982, which was, funny enough, exactly the same year as the BMW 3 Series with the E30. However, the E30 4-door only came out 1 year later. Mercedes went absolutely crazy developing this car. They decided to build this compact sedan because at the beginning of the 1970s there was an oil crisis, so big engines weren't really a thing. They were phasing out big engines because they guzzled a lot of gas. That's why they went with 4 cylinders, although there are also some 6 cylinders, but I do think that the majority of the cars that they sold were 4-cylinder. To say that this car was a success is an understatement, because the numbers that I looked up, Mercedes, they produced over 1.8 million of these puppies. So they were extremely popular car for Mercedes. While researching this video, I also researched a little bit about the E30, obviously, and I did see that the E30, they actually sold over 2.3 million units, which is more than this car. Although they had a touring, they had a sedan, a cabriolet, and a coupe. So they had 4 body shapes, whereas this, sedan. That's it, period. One little detail of this car, it's got a 0.32 drag coefficient. What does that mean? I have no clue. But I do think it's good for economy and good for noise inside the cabin, so that when you're driving at speed, it isn't all that noisy. Still, impressive that in 1970s, 1980s, they could get such low drag coefficient. This car is one of the first production cars ever to feature ABS. Also featured pre-tensioners on the seat belts. I'm not sure if as an option or standard, but nonetheless it was available. It was one of the first production cars to feature as an option airbags, which was, I mean, for the time, remember, this was 40 years ago. It was a long time ago. One other key component of this car that they made a big deal about at the time is the rear suspension. So this rear suspension, how plush it is. This rear suspension, it's a 5-link suspension, which was groundbreaking at the time. I think it was even the first production car to feature a 5-link suspension. This type of suspension, it gave better stability, better ride quality, better grip. So overall, it was just a more advanced design that they did to the suspension for this car. Lastly, for safety, they also included crumple zones for the passengers. So this car is one of the very first cars to actually feature crumple zones here in the front. So some of you might not even remember seeing this car, depending on how old you are and where you live in the world. But I do remember being a kid, and these were all the rage in terms of taxi drivers. You saw these cars like, I don't know, like Skittles, like M&Ms, like cockroaches in some places. They were absolutely everywhere. Why? They're very good to drive, they were relatively economical, and they were extremely reliable, which are characteristics that a taxi driver is looking for in a car. I do remember seeing these absolutely everywhere. And having driven this car for 10,000 kilometers, I'm not entirely sure how many kilometers my grandfather actually did. Although he owned this car for a little bit over 20 years, I imagine he put on the majority of the kilometers that it does have. To me, it is a testament to the development, the build quality that Mercedes was offering back in the day, that the taxi scene was filled with 190s. They were absolutely everywhere. Now, let's start this puppy up. All right, now driving the 190, the W201 chassis. Let me just get this boring thing out of the way. This car was developed in the midst of an oil crisis, so fuel economy was important. The average that I'm getting with this car, considering that it's got a 4-speed automatic, is right around between 7 and 8 liters. It's right around that area. Driving impressions. It's a 40-year-old Mercedes. It is very plush, very soft, but it isn't, let's say, it isn't all that sophisticated, the suspension. In the sense that, for example, air suspension is more sophisticated. You can feel like it's more expensive. This one is very soft. Irregularities in the road, bumps. You notice the car moving, you can hear things going on, but it isn't jarring. Funny thing, whenever I leave my M3 and I come to this car, it's like I'm sailing on water. It's incredible how smooth it actually is. While we are discussing smoothness, I think we should talk about this gearbox. As I briefly touched on it before, I was never into automatic gearboxes. With age and having to drive in traffic, I'm getting more into them. And I was relatively happy to know that this car was an automatic when I knew that I was getting this car. Why? Because, I mean, it suits the nature of this car. I doubt that I would be getting any more pleasure out of this car if it had a manual gearbox. Maybe it was a bit faster, maybe it was a bit more economical, yes. But the automatic gearbox, it suits this car very well. It is very smooth. It tries to get to the highest gear as soon as possible, which it is a little bit of a drawback because sometimes you want it to be in third and it's already in fourth. No matter, you can just do this, it's in third now. It is very smooth. The gearbox, what it does, it rolls onto gears. It doesn't start in first, never, unless you select here. Funny enough, you select the 2, you put the selector on the number 2, and it goes into first. Or if you're pulling out and you really floor the car, it will drop to first to get you going quicker. But other than that, effectively, it starts in second and it goes to fourth as quickly as possible in a very smooth manner. However, I'm not entirely sure if it's this car because it has some issue or if it's all of these cars because, so bear in mind, I never drove another 190. This is the only 190, especially automatic, that I've driven. And sometimes, okay, when it's cold, I can forgive it. When it's cold, sometimes from second to third, just bangs on the gear. You feel a violent knocking coming from the drivetrain when it's going from second to third. I can excuse it because the oil might be a little bit cold and very thick. So what I usually do, I just keep it in second, drive it for a bit, or I just start the car and let it idle for, I don't know, 3-4 minutes. And then the oil has had time to warm up and circulate. And then that change, you can barely feel it. However, when you're driving very slowly, it does. So if I'm on the throttle and I'm trying to get somewhere briskly, it's very smooth slotting in the gears. If I'm just resting my foot on the throttle, just very slowly accelerating, sometimes it does lap a gear as well, and it's not as smooth as you'd expect, which is a shame. I talked a fair bit about the 5-link suspension in the rear. How does this car drive? I'm here in a twisty road, which isn't the natural habitat of this car, but it manages corners very well, very composed, and bear in mind, it's a very comfortable car. It's not a performance-oriented car at all. Still, it's very good through the corners. You can't really feel what it's doing, to be honest, but it is very nice to drive. Very, very nice. I feel very impressed driving this car. I almost forgot, this car is a naturally aspirated diesel. That's something you just do not see these days, apart from maybe military Toyotas, something like that. This car has no turbo, so the power delivery is very linear. It gives you more power as the revs build. It doesn't give you much power, but it gives you more power. As I said, it's very smooth to drive. It's a very relaxed driving experience, but when you need to get somewhere quick, the composure is there. It's a very well composed car. I'm sure it's not as engaging to drive as an E30, but I mean, taking this corner at 50 kilometers per hour, it was quite a bendy corner. No problem at all. No problem at all. Now, how fast is it? I mean, from what I read, from what my grandfather told me, it's good for 180 kilometers per hour. Does it get there quickly? No. But funny thing is, getting off the line, it is relatively slow, especially since it starts in second gear most of the time. But if you floor it, it does get a move on, and I do feel that at speed. So when you're driving on motorways, it drives very nicely. I can keep up with modern traffic without any issues. It does 120 clicks, 140 clicks, like it's nothing. One drawback of having a 4-speed, which I imagine the 5-speed manual isn't as bad, is that revs, they sit a bit high for my liking and for my comfort. Doing 120, I think you're doing what, 3,000 or above, more than 3,000 RPM, which does make it a bit noisy, which, I mean, not all that good. Lastly, before I go to my likes and dislikes, one thing that this car does well, in my opinion, is it fits in no matter what you need to do, no matter where you're going. It fits in very well. If you're going to the shops, if you're going to dinner, if you're going to somewhere more fancy, bear in mind, if the car is well maintained, it is a classic car now. It just fits in very well. The lines, they are very avant-garde, they're very boxy. Yes, granted, it was for a life in the 1970s, but to be honest, it still fits very well with my life, even to this day. It doesn't have the modern conveniences that a modern car has. It doesn't have CarPlay, doesn't have a particularly good stereo. Actually, this car, it isn't even working. But, I mean, it does things brilliantly, it drives brilliantly, it's relatively economical for what you're getting. It is tiny. The size of this car it's incredible. Yes, it comes with drawbacks, like I'm going to mention in a little bit, but you can position this car super well on a road. It's quite practical in that sense, so it is very convenient. Okay, now time for my, let's start with dislikes, because while yes, I do like this car very much, no car, even a car built in 2025, is perfect. And I do have some dislikes with this car. They are in no particular order, but these are the dislikes that I can point out, at least now. First and foremost, because that's the thing that I do the most, the driving position. The driving position, as you might have already seen on this video, is not ideal, especially for taller people. My head, it touches the headliner. I need to drive more tilted than I would like because of this. Otherwise, I'm just scraping the headliner, which isn't ideal. My legs, they're slightly bent, and I cannot go further back because the steering wheel, it does not move anywhere. It does not tilt, it does not have any rake, so the steering wheel is fixed. My leg does touch the steering wheel a little bit. It's not ideal. I just got used to it, but I can tell you that it is not ideal. When I got this car, I was stoked because it has very little in terms of electronic things to go wrong. One of the things it does not have is electric windows. Okay, I thought, when I'm just driving by myself, fine. I can just wind up the window, wind it down, no issues. However, if you're driving with a son in the back seat and he wants to have a little bit of air, you need to go back there, open the window, and then you gotta close the window. Second thing, you pull up to a security guard, for example, that has a little station on the right side. He comes up to the passenger window, and you look like a fool because to open the window, you got to stretch all the way to that side to open the window up. That's an inconvenience. You can live with it, yes, but electric windows is something that we've come used to nowadays, obviously. This car did have as an option electric windows. I'm not entirely sure if it had it on the back windows as well, but on the front I've seen many cars with the switches here on the center console to operate the windows electrically. One actually big dislike for me is the rust protection, or the lack thereof. I don't know why cars of this age, they tend to rust so badly. I'm not entirely sure how a 2020 car will behave in 40 years time. But this car has got two big rust spots at the back that I need to fix, and God knows where else. But it is quite prone to rust, and that's a thing to also keep in mind. Another dislike is that, this car has got 40-year-old technology. Things were developed in a different time. Mechanics that used to work in these cars back in the day, they are no longer available, or they're just being phased out. Yes, mechanics is mechanics, but some things like throttles and gearbox tuning and things as such, they sometimes need a little bit of expertise. I haven't had this issue personally, but I do think that some mechanics will not know exactly how to work on these cars on some very specific things. That's another thing to keep in mind. Another dislike of mine about this car, and it's this car specific, not the model, because I'm not entirely sure, but I think that only at the end of the production this was available, not in the beginning of the production, although this is a later car. But this car does not have AC. When I got it, I thought to myself, I don't really care, no AC. When it gets hot, it's a pain in the butt. When you have a kid inside, it's a pain in the butt when it's really hot, of course. Because you want to keep the car cool, right? And without AC, you can crank the windows, but if it's 40 degrees outside, no matter how much you crank the windows open, you're gonna run into issues. And in the winter time, yes, you can heat up the cabin, but one thing that the AC does is it draws moisture from the air, it dries the air up. And when you get in the car, it's raining, you were running outside, for example, you enter the car and the car just fogs up instantly. And the AC is quicker at defogging the car. Another little dislike that I have with the air system is that it does not, to the best of my ability, it does not have an air filter. So if you leave it under trees, if you leave it parked for some time, or if you cross an area full of dirt in the air, something like that, the air that you're pumping inside the cabin is unfiltered, which is, it's not ideal, but it is what it is. My last dislike that I've written down is so it does not have a key fob, in the sense that it doesn't have central locking that you can open with a remote. You might think, oh, that's very shallow, that's very uninteresting. Yes and no. It's raining, you're with your son, or you have more people in the car and you're running in the back. You just want to open the car for other people to get in. It's very convenient. The funny thing is, you don't feel like these little features, they make a difference until you're actually lacking those features, and then you start, oh, that's nice to have. That's nice to have. And yeah, that's my last dislike. Okay, so now that we got the dislikes out of the way, let's do likes. First and foremost, it's really smooth to drive. This car is very relaxed. It's a very compact car. You can position it very well on the road. Parking this car is incredible. Parking this car, it's very, very easy. You got great visibility out, you got a great big window. It's very easy to judge the limits of the car. That brings me on to the turning radius. This car's got a tremendous turning radius. It's not a smart car, obviously, but I mean, most of the times I see a little space, oh, I think I can turn around here. No problem. In one swoop, turn around very easily. It's a godsend in terms of maneuverability of this car. Another like for this car, it's very comfortable. Yes, it's not an S-Class in terms of seat comfort and suspension sophistication, but it is very comfortable. These roads, they are relatively in poor condition, and it's comforting. Another like for me, and yes, it is subjective, because yes, looks are subjective, but the way it looks. To me, this car looks very polished. It looks industrial, it looks functional. It looks like it was made to do a job, and it can do it very well. Bruno Sacco, he was I think the head of design for Mercedes at the time that this car was designed. That's why this is one of Bruno Sacco's creations, and I think he completely nailed the design of this car. It's incredibly beautiful to my eyes, to many other people's eyes as well, but I do think that design, the way that it looks, very, very nice. Another like for this car, in my opinion, is the monowiper or monoblade. It's a design that was I think in all Mercedes of the period. It was in the W201, which is this car. It was in its successor, the W202, the first actual C-Class with the name C-Class. It's just fun to watch. The technology behind it is, it's intriguing, and it does a tremendously good job of cleaning out the windshield. I think it's somewhere, it's between 85 and 95% of the windshield is cleaned with this monoblade. And I just really actually like this. And again, if it's good enough for this car, it's good enough for the Koenigsegg as well, right? Another like in my book is that parts are relatively cheap. Disc brakes, relatively cheap. Brake pads, cheap. Furthermore, they made so many of these cars that you probably can find something on eBay or at the local junkyard, something like that. It makes it cheaper to run, and the ownership overall is cheaper. Mercedes, unfortunately, isn't able to provide all parts anymore. There are many parts that are no longer available, but so far I haven't had a single thing that I wanted to fix, and the aftermarket doesn't support it. So far, I've been golden. Almost wrapping up here with the likes. How practical it is. They designed this car to fit around the modern society that was coming up in the 1970s, 1980s. So they wanted a practical car. This car is very practical. Everything basically works. The trunk space, very big. It's a very, very practical car. One thing that isn't actually all that practical is that the seats, unfortunately, they do not fold. Why? Well, because Mercedes, they decided to put the fuel tank behind the rear seats. So the fuel tank is sandwiched between the rear seats and the trunk. So that's why the seats, they do not fold down, which is, I mean, it's a shame, but you can't have it all, can you? And lastly, one of my biggest likes, I'm gonna say this again because to me it's impactful. This car was developed 40 years ago. There was no traction control. The modern safety features that existed back in the that exist nowadays, they did not exist back then. However, this car, it feels tremendously safe to drive. No matter where I am, no matter how quickly I'm driving this car, I feel safe. I feel like the car is taking very good care of me. To me, that's one of the best features. To have a car that actually takes care of you, that you can drive with peace of mind, that it's safe. I'm sure that the crash safety isn't up to par with today's standards, yes, but in terms of driving safety, grip, and knowing that, okay, the car is not gonna turn on me. Look, these corners, I have an Audi A1, which is, yes, it's an 11-year-old car, but it's very young compared to this, and I have zero trouble keeping up with them. It's absolutely astonishing. As I said in the beginning of this video, the purpose of this video was to actually review the 190 platform. In this case, it's in diesel. I know it's not the most exciting, but it's got its benefits, and it was the one that was given to me. So I'm very thankful to have this car in my fleet of cars. But the question that I wanted to answer was, if a 40 or 50-year-old 50-year-old design and 40-year-old production car, if it could work as a daily in 2025. To answer that question, I've been driving this car for, I think, over 1 year now. It's been basically my daily driver. I've driven it tons. My partner has driven it tons as well. But she's also been driving this car, and she comes to me and she says, "Can I drive your grandfather's car, please?" Because she enjoys driving this car more than the X3. I do have a little gripe with that because, I mean, the X3 feels more, it's just more modern. It's got more convenience to it. It's just easier to live with. But that's coming from me, and I'm a bit pedantic in the sense that I don't want anything to break. I try to baby this car as much as I can. The actual answer to that question is yes, absolutely. You can daily drive this car without any issues. You're getting 90 to 95% of what you actually need for a daily driver. There are some drawbacks, yes, for long distance drives. The fact that it revs high at motorway speeds, it's not ideal, yes. The fact that the back seats, they do not fold, it's not ideal, yes. But what you get in return is you're driving a car that has, I mean, it has stood the test of time. This car, I used to ride this car when I was a kid. My grandfather used to drive this car until he passed away. Now I get to drive this car until God knows when. And that's just very, very cool. And the fact that it can do daily duty I mean, it's incredible. So yes, you can daily drive a 40 to 50-year-old car, bearing in mind that it's in good condition, but it's absolutely possible, and I actually recommend doing so because it's somewhat liberating. Now, with that said, that's it for this video. It's probably a long video, as always. I have no idea how. I mean, I'm either a really crappy reviewer or they are really good, because most of my reviews, they're 20-30 minutes long, and sometimes people, they review cars in 15 minutes, and I'm like, what? How the hell could you condense the necessary information in such a short time? But, well, with that said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and more videos coming along sometime in the future. Yeah, so take care.